It gave them freedom. And guess what? They built their houses, them tents and everything, the buffalo bones, right? And they used as a blanket, you know, to cover themselves. And it gave them mobility and freedom. It was 6 million buffalo in America, right? And then the European, they did several things. Number one, they changed the style to buffalo robes back east and over in Europe. That means hats and coats, everything buffalo. So then they sent people out on just when they invented the train, they sent them out there, and they used to just sit on the train and shoot the buffalo. And Buffalo Bill, which you all know, that's where he got his name, for being a famous buffalo hunter. So they had a manifest destiny. And they moved everything aside. If the buffalo was in the way, if the buffalo gave the Indians freedom of mobility, something to eat, right? Then they killed it. They got it out of the way. Because so their idea of manifest destiny, it is our destiny. And what was their destiny? To be a two-ocean power controlled by Anglo-Saxons. They don't usually write that in the book, but that's what they all knew it meant. In other words, Anglo, European, white-based, English-speaking white folks, right? That's their mission in life, to make the United States of America a two-ocean power. And by the time, you got to look at the land they be taking. The Louisiana Prussians, they bought that, but the French stole it from the Indians anyway, right? But you got to think of Texas. When you go into Texas, at Beaumont, Texas, and you go go out in El Paso, you started in the swamps of Louisiana, and you wind up in the desert, the great American desert at El Paso. Look at it, how it looks. It's totally different. That's how big Texas is. And right now, if you live in Texas, you think of yourself as a Texan. First, tell the truth. Your kids, did they tell you that the people in Texas, when they talk about the rest of America, that's secondary. Texas is first. I mean, and they serious about it. The Republic of Texas, oh, we happen to be part of the United States, but I mean, let's don't get too carried away about it, right? Texas, look how big Texas is. New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona, listen to the names, Arizona, right? California, Caliphate, right? That's all, what all that means. From Spanish, from Arabic, right? Oh, look at the size of those states. If you go from here to New York, it's only a 4-hour drive, you drive through 4 states just right here. You driving out there in the west, you driving all day and you're halfway through the state, right? If you're going in Texas, just across Texas, hey, you're going to be there all day, like a long time, right? California, Arizona, all of those are big, huge states. Colorado, right? They're huge states. They stole all of them from Mexico. They stole them. They took them. Why? Because they had an idea of America as being two-ocean power, right? And what goes along with that two-ocean power? What they call manifest destiny. Okay, this is from our lecture back in 83, 80, good God. So now every environment, every age produces needs. And nature has a means of satisfying the needs of hunger, sex, sleep, and such. Society should develop institutions to answer the needs of the individual, the community, and the nation. Now remember, this is when we first opened the Masjid al-Islam in Oakland. I'm going through this because we'll go through this stage one, and the middle stage we'll go through what we've dealt with in the middle stage, and then the end stage would be the third lecture, and then what we propose to do in our return to California very soon. So there's a method to this madness. Manifest destiny. Two ocean power. So everything was set aside to make that come true. So what's in the way? We have Indians out there running around. Well, we'll just kill them. Well, how are you going to get rid of them? They get around pretty good. They got buffalo everywhere. Well, hey, it won't be that long because we're going to kill all the buffalo, right? And what do? Killed all those buffalo and then put them in reservations, gave them all that cough syrup and stuff, and broke the back of the liberated Native American movement. Don't worry now, boss man ain't gonna get away with all that. Anyway, we keep moving. But we're talking about where we were at psychologically and mentally, that there's a purpose, there should be an aim, and the human being should be in control of his own life. Now you can remember by 1980 we had went through a lot of changes. And also we had to figure out, coming out of prison, what are we going to do? Because in those periods there's a time of figuring out what should be the goal now, where should be, how we going to do that, and then it comes up Islam. But also, what is the process? What is this? And Islam is a liberating force. And Islam unites us with all the people that are in the world. And this is the period when colonialism is ending, and it's just about ended by that time. But not neo-colonialism, just we're the white man and we run your country, that colonialism. Okay. By the way, the clerk passed away the other day. Good for him, not good for him. Anyway, not good for him. Anyway. So, now about this evolution, we are responsible for our own evolution. In those days, African Americans they hadn't won their freedom, so they were trying to hook up with D.C. and the state houses, everything, political stuff. And we say you got to cut the cord, the umbilical cord. You have to cut the cord with Washington, D.C. You have to become independent and not depend on them to give you your freedom. And by that time, they let black people become mayors and all of that type of thing, and everybody was happy. Yeah, sure, you are happy for about 2 weeks because all the businesses are moved out of town. And they leave the Negro with Gary, Indiana, Chicago, Oakland. Have you seen the homelessness in Oakland? It's 2.5, I just left a little while ago, it's 2.5 times worse than when I was there. I done stayed here, we got the mass and all this stuff, so I'm not running out there. So I just said I'll wait here. I was going to leave a year and almost 2 years ago and go right back to California. Then The homelessness was, okay, just if you want to visualize Oakland, California, visualize Soweto, those shacks in South Africa. Visualize on some streets going for mile after mile after mile in the United States. Visualize LA. I have to explain something. See, homelessness here is a problem, but see, California got something that y'all ain't got here. You know what that is? Good weather. Right? So the homeless is getting paranoid now because, you know, they got, but in California, like today, would be about the coldest day it's gonna be. Today, this is be about in San Francisco and LA, it's 60 degrees in January. You know, I mean, that's not warm, but it ain't like below zero, 10 degrees, 15 degrees, 25 degrees like they are here, right? So what do the homeless do? They say, well, if they got any sense, they head for California or Arizona. Arizona's a little hot. They'll burn up out here. You can't sit out there in that sun. No, it'll cook you. But California, boy, it's just right. I'm telling you, it's just right. You wouldn't believe it. It looks like no one ever thought that this would happen to America. No one ever even imagined. Go back 40 or 50 years ago. Did anybody imagine that America could become where there's millions of homeless people? Millions? I mean, real homeless people, you know. Okay, so let me go on. So we're responsible for our own evolution. The government is not responsible. Some charity relief is not responsible for our evolution. We are, with Allah's assistance, responsible for our own evolution. So let us study the best examples as a pattern. If you want to study how tall people can get, you wouldn't study midgets, you'd study Watusis, right? And you know, I think there's still a few of them left. Y'all remember Watusis? I know it was a dance, but it was actually a people called Watusis in Africa, in Rwanda. They were giants, right? A guy 10 years old would be 6'10". The Watusis. So if you want to study tallness, you study them. If you want to study moral character, you study the people that have lived through and adjusted to and enhanced the moral and courageous behavior of the human being. So if you want to study the fastest people, you go to the Olympic records. Say, these boys is fast here, right? To give you inspiration of what you can do. So we always say that Islam is a whole food. It's full of vitamins and minerals and everything that you need. That's Islam. So at that time, we looked at we needed a political wedge, a financial wedge. Because America had created appetites in us, but didn't give us a method, a process to satisfy those appetites. That's why a lot of us see rich people in America and they gave them either, if you want to get rich, even now they let a few Negroes in and you go through that path. Some people didn't like that. So you get an appetite, a hunger, but you don't have a process or a method, right? to satisfy that hunger, that desire. Now I'm talking about wealth, riches, just living like a human being. So, sociology says that any living organism, in order to survive, or any living organism must either adapt to its environment or change its environment, right? If it wants to survive. So that meant we as a people, we have to adapt to America, adjust to America, accept America, right? Get in there and make it work, right? Like many people do. Get in there and make it work. Well, we had to change America. Of course, we felt our mission then and now was always to change America. Now, I know many people come here and things are pretty bad back home, so they come here and they stay and they could drive a cab, they could do anything and make a lot of money and send it back home. But you know, when we did this, a student could go to school, work in a restaurant, wash dishes and get tips. He could send hundreds of dollars back home to, if he married, both sides of his family. To the wife's side, send a few $100s, right? And to his family side, he could be looking out for 2 families, plus he taking care of his education, because he had to pay more because he's an immigrant student, and he could live in a nice apartment. Now, y'all, that was the heyday. That was the end of America the Great. Remember, this is 1980. Right after this, there haven't been no heydays since then. Right? America has been headed down since then, but boy, has it accumulated its downward path. Okay. So, we're just going through, this is the lecture that we gave to open up, it was March 23rd, 1980. So, of course, we had a program, 6-point program. Number 1, get organized. Number 2, get your truth out. Number 3, establish physical, moral, and spiritual program, institute economic program, educational program, personal material consumption, that's last. Personal material consumption was last. So this is the plan that we hooked up when we were still in prison. Some of the brothers have seen material from parole boards and everything, and they say clearly, when you go out this time, we don't want you to do no Muslim activity, right? That's what they were saying. That's what the parole people are saying. We don't want you to do none of that. Of course, I told them they can kiss my behind. You know, when I go out, this is what we're going to do. And that's what we did. Okay. But what we want to say here is that we wanted to declare jihad, you know, jihad against poverty, jihad against ignorance, right? Jihad against injustice. All of those things. And we said nobody is going to turn us around now. Of course, we have here, we love our family, but we ain't gonna let them turn us around. If they don't want to go, we just have to keep going. And guess what? After several years, you have to go through that. Sometimes everything you anticipate happens. It really happens. So, some people, if they want to stop them, they just influence their family, get them to that, and they stop. That's not our case. So no family, no drug, no fame. Fame wipes the Negro out too. Well, all human beings. You want to be popular? You want to be famous? You know, I was watching a show. I'm not going to go through it. But one of the brothers here from D.C., I think they offered him $50 million for something he was supposed to do. And he took off and went to Africa and stuff. He said, bump y'all. At the same time, they had a sister, Mariah Carey. Y'all remember her? She looked like a white girl. But all of a sudden, she done got a $1 zillion contract and she's almost taking off her clothes and acting real stupid at the same time. That's because boss man make you an offer sometime, right? And you pick the wrong offer and it runs you crazy because you know it's wrong. It's not you. So some people, everybody tell them, man, I took that money. And some people say, I ain't taking nothing. You know, I know what I want to do. And you look at them, you'll see that they come out better. So no drug, no fame. Fame is very important to people who have never been famous before. After you've been famous, it loses a lot of shine. Or it has its addiction. You keep wanting to be famed, or old Hollywood actress dyeing her hair a certain way. Y'all remember Jaja Gabor? You don't remember that? That old lady had 50,000 skin drafts, and she looked like she was a tender, but if you would have touched her, boy, I think that stuff would have crumbled. You know, a lot of our people choose the surface, and they're not who they is wrong for them. They got a case right now. Who's a little lady that used to be at the kids shows, and now she's popular. They got a case in L.A.
Britney Spears. Britney Spears.
Britney Spears. They was about to run her crazy, then they did this, that, and another. And then they had a show on a whole. I said, oh, yeah. So she got everybody talking about free Britney now. You know what I mean? So she's only half crazy. That's not bad from somebody that they had run all the way crazy. You know, just to be half crazy is a step up. Anyway, I'm going to speed up. So we wanted to declare jihad in Oakland against poverty, against ignorance, against injustice. And those are still worthy goals right now. There's a lot of things that we wanted to do, and some of them we did, because we always thought then and thought now that life is a continuous evolutionary process. And we were already using the word evolutionary would be superior to a revolution, because we had been living through the revolutionary period. And then we understood that a revolution is something that's quick and it's dynamic, and an evolution is something that's maybe a little slower, a little less dynamic, but it's a continuous process of improving and adaptability. You're either improving your environment or you're adapting to your environment and improving it. You see what I mean? And that's why we have settled on evolution over revolution. But in those days, revolution over evolution. Because when you're younger, you don't have the patience to wait for an evolutionary process. You want freedom, that's what he said. Freedom when? Now. Freedom now. Okay, we're going to pass over a few things here. but we want to talk about stunted growth. And this is addressing African Americans in particular. Why do we have, now we've made a good decision to come to Islam. A wonderful decision. But as we made the decision to come into Islam, we also didn't get rid of our second-class citizenship approach. In fact, as Zaid Shaka said that we just, I think he said it, I didn't hear him personally, but I think I read he said it and some other people, that we gave our, we had adopted Arabs, Pakistanis, and everybody, right, and their movements as first over ours, right? But they were here in the United States, and guess who knows more about the United States? Me and you do. That's why none of the decisions of all the big guys, see the big guys that came here from overseas, I don't know what they gave them, but by the time we started this talk, they had bought into America the Great. And they had bought into easing into the system known as America. And everybody looks at us and says, well, why don't you just integrate into America? Just get in there and play ball, right? Yeah, go in there and play ball with America, right? They're going to throw you a Palestinian pitch. Okay, we want you to strike out on this pitch. You don't stand up for Palestinians, you don't do nothing, Of course, that's their land and that's their, and Al-Quds and Al-Ula al-Qiblatain, the first of the two Qiblas, forget about all of that. So when you come up to bat, the pitcher gonna throw you a certain ball and you're instructed to hit it or miss it, right? And that's what our people did here. And they told them, stay away from them mean-talking, separatist Negroes, right? That's why there's 5 people here, right? It ain't 5 this morning, but that's why it ain't nobody here now. Right? This place used to be full. Why? Because boss man pulled the cord. A lot of people are not prepared for that. We are, because we said we was prepared for it 35, 40 years ago. Why? Because that's what he do. You're gonna get in line, nigga? No, sir, I ain't going with that. Well, good. Okay, all you other niggas, stay away from him. Stay away from them. That's what they say. Right? Or, let's run 50 games at one time. Let's fill them up. Sometimes we had programs here you couldn't get in. Right? And then we'll pull them back. Make them think they did something wrong. We say, hey, we ain't did nothing wrong. Right? Because we got the record here. Right? And we've been studying this all the time. This is normal. And guess what? We got it good here in America. This isolation, this we don't like you stuff, by the Zionists in the Americans, they better like somebody because they both getting their butts whooped. Right? The world is laughing at them. They're not laughing at us. Let's think about it now. The world is laughing at boss man. Everything they did to us now is happening to them. Right? Okay. So all that talk about you have to cooperate. We don't have to cooperate with evil and wrong at all. For nothing. We're not going to do it. Right? Why are we not going to do it? We're not going to do it because it's not part of our mission. Right? It's not part of Islam. Why? Because we open up that I'm happy with Allah as God, as my Rabbi, right? With Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the messenger, right? Just happy with that. And Islam, Adina, as our way of life. So, this lecture is from 1980, at the beginning of when we opened our Masjid in DC, in Oakland. We have been through several trials and tribulations, and they've all been fun. Yeah, they've all been fun. But see, we know what it looks like when you're maybe that's like somewhere else. This is how many people did they kill in Iraq? How many people did they maim and do all of this, right? And they say anything they want. They say, is that a known or unknown known? Remember that dumb man? The people are trying to figure out what to do. And he says, you know, the Secretary of State, whoever he was, there's known knowns, and then there's unknown knowns, and then there's known unknowns. And them dumb people was trying to figure out what they was. Do we know that you invaded Iraq and slaughtered the people? And the first time of the invasion, you used chemical weapons, right? Depleted uranium. Why? Because Saddam Hussein done fought Iranians for 8 years. He has a big 4 million army almost, right? And it's too big for the Zionists. They don't like it. So they trapped Saddam Hussein. Yeah? You remember Mrs. Gillespie, April Gillespie? Saddam asked her, she was ambassador, what if we acted a fool and just jumped on so-and-so now? What did she say? We have nothing to do with inter-Arab conflicts, right? That's what she said. That was a trap for Saddam, because he's a dummy. So he invaded him. Invaded, he got Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. And for that, they semi-destroyed Iraq and came back later on to really destroy it. And now it's a hellhole to live in, right? To protect the Zionist state. We don't want an Arab country that's had years of fighting, 8 years of fighting with Iranians, and then the Iranians are saying, Magbag America too, right? Hey, that's not good for that reason, for that region, right? Nobody's paying attention. With that in mind, the United States invaded Iraq. They just leaving Afghanistan after 20 years, and when they got there, it wasn't nothing to blow up. The Russians had blown up everything for 10 years, right? All that, those people are enemies of Islam. We're not with them. We're not going to allow them to tell us what to do. We don't care if there's 2 people here or 1. Why? Because when you get to the day of judgment, ain't nobody going to be there but you, right? And Allah not going to ask me about, well, what if all the niggas was over at the party? I wasn't with them. You know where I was? I was right here. Wasn't acting that good, but that's where I was. All right. Because, you know, they're going to say, he's going to say, you going over there, you listen to them, going over there with them then. You know where they're going to be. Absolutely not. They're believers. We're still in the same situation now. Except we done gave them 40 years to give Islam a bad name. Over 40 years. Do you remember? That was a time when you said you were a Muslim in the black community, you were a semi-celebrity. One thing people knew, they don't have nothing against us, right? They might be smoking a little weed on the side, but they ain't gonna do nothing else. Where's that now? Right? That all that took years to build up is drifting away. Could you turn the heater off? Yeah, it's hotter up here than it is down there. Anyway, I'll move toward a close. I want you to think about being raised as a midget. Being raised as something that never reaches its full capacity. And that reminds us of an oak tree in the garden. Of course, I'm from Oakland, so oak tree is very heavy, it's very strong. And so, in California, they got Japanese, Chinese, so I went into this garden, and it was a bonsai tree, oak tree. And they said, yeah, that tree is 100 years old. I say, I run in the hills every day, that's an oak tree. That's an oak tree is heavy. You ever lift it? The wood of oak is heavy. They used to use it in buildings, and when we was remodeling our Masjid in Oakland, the oak in there was twice as heavy, 3 times as heavy as this new kind of wood. Anyway, so the gardener said, yeah, this is my grandfather began to raise that tree, and he clip it at the root, clip it at the top, and then he would transplant it. And then he would clip it at the root, clip it at the top, and transplant it. It became a beautiful ornament. As long as you want to be an ornament here, it's all right for Negroes, right? But you don't find many of them running no companies or nothing, right? If you want to be an ornament, something to make fun of, something to laugh at, something to sit in the garden or something, this is an oak tree. An oak tree is a heavy, strong wood, right? But if you cut it at the root, clip it at the top, and transplant it, right, over and over again, you're going to produce a beautiful ornamental tree that serves the purpose of ornamentation, right? What about you? Brought over here, clipped at the root. Remember all the movies, Roots? Did everybody want to go back to their roots? Did it do them any good to find our roots? That we wasn't bums and we wasn't boys? Just to change the subject of a minute. Why do you think African Americans always call each other, hey man, what's going on? Why do you think that? Why do you think? It's simple. Because they always call us boys. Boy, come here, you could be 100 years old. Isn't that right? So we naturally call each other man. And in our neighborhood, all the old folks are called Miss So-and-so. And right? Even now, some of it still exists. Honoring their age and their blood, right? Oh, that's Miss So-and-so. That, right? Why do you think we did that? Because it was always girl or boy. Come here, girl, and get that there, something other, and bring it over here. Right? They talked to us like children and they treated us like children. And we responded in opposite ways. So, that's a bad nigga there. And nobody want to be a bad nigga, right? But we do. That's a bad nigga. That means he's tough, he's smart, right? So everybody else, he's a good nigga. No, he ain't no, I ain't want to be no good. A good nigga is one that relates to boss man. Isn't that right? He's a good nigga. Carry everything, do everything, tell him, right? He's a good nigga. Right? We responded in our way to be human beings. Hey, man, I didn't even have to know a guy. If we just met each other, it was, hey, man, what's going on? Right? If you're driving somewhere in the city, and you didn't, this is in the old days, you would just stop and ask somebody, where's everybody at? In other words, where's the black people? When I first left Oakland, went up to Portland, Oregon, that's the first thing I did. As soon as I saw a black person, where's everybody at? As soon as you got in the neighborhood, the smells, the sounds, and everywhere, and then you go, where they gonna be at in Seattle? You know? And that's where you would go because it was security, right? And everybody knew all of these things about each other. So we didn't know why we called each other man, but somebody did. That's our greeting. Hey man, what's going on? We always did it. All right, we'll get back to the point. We're going to close here in a minute. Back to being a dwarf. Clipped at the bottom, clipped at the top, and transplanted over here, right? So the African American is roots, clipped at the root, right? When I was in East Africa, I used to hang with one of my friends. I used to call he visited Congo. I used to call him Congo Slim, but his real name was Hussein, and he was from Somalia. He says, do you know, how do you know much about your history? I said, oh, I know back. I said, I got it good. I know my grandfather, great-grandfather, way back to 1800. He said, I know 40 generations, and that's me. I'm a hustler. He said, the rest of my family, they know 60 generations. They can recite it back, right? I said, no, it ain't like that to us. He felt sorry for me. He actually did. And he was a street hustler like me, Somalia. There used to be a lot of Somalians in East Africa in those days. Well, Tanzania. So anyway, clipped at the root, clipped at the top, the roots, you don't know where you came from. Africa, you ever seen Africa? You ever seen that continent? That's a big boy, right? To not know where you came from and who you're related to, right? And your history. And what were the jokes they made about Africa? He got lost as far as from Timbuktu. Timbuktu meant an unknown place when I was growing up. It didn't mean it was a seat of knowledge. The first colleges in Africa was in Timbuktu, in Mali, right? We didn't know all of that. We had to stumble up on it. To get lost mean that you was like Timbuktu. You know, right? Y'all might not be old enough to remember quite, but I'm saying those were sayings that we had. The other thing is this, clipped at the root, that you don't know where you're from. You're from the dark continent. Yeah. Great news. So you're cut off at the root because remember, everybody else come here could keep talking like they was back home, right? So everybody came here and they brought their culture. So it takes 3 generations for Italian, maybe 4 for Italians not to speak Italian. Because the mom and the daddy come and the children, they all speak Italian. Then the next generation, they speak broken Italian. Then after that, it's a mix. They can understand all the food and the culture, right? And it takes 3 or 4 generations for you to work that out of them. But the Negro, the first generation that got here, they whipped it out of you so you couldn't speak your language, right? Your food, your culture. So you cut at the root. You cut at the top because you can't go to school. You can't learn anything, right? It's illegal to teach you anything, right? Remember? That just a little 100 and some years ago. It ain't like a long time ago. So you raise a people that's illiterate. And where they come from? They come from the dark continent where people wear grass skirts and camels. Y'all, everybody remember that, right? They wear grass skirts over there. Forget about them great empires. They great empire, what are you talking about? And after you watch them movies, Rhonda Fleming, them with red hair playing in the land of the pharaohs, you know, and Jack Hawkins is the pharaoh. Good God Almighty. He's as white as he can get. He can't get no whiter than Jack Hawkins. Right? Then when you go to Egypt, you look and say, hey. Now this is after invasion and all that stuff. He said, man, the Egyptians is dark. And then the ones near up here is light and mixed. But don't get down close to Sudan. You can tell, because you can't tell a southern Egyptian from a northern Sudanese. They all look the same, right? They lied to us so bad. I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. There's no greater crime than to cut people off from who they are and what contributions they made. And then they wonder why them niggas run up and down the street and act a fool, because they were bred as fools, taught to be fools, right? Taught, educated, and trained to be an idiot. Trained to waste his money, right? You don't see nobody doing like we do. Everybody that come here from somewhere else, they try to stick with their family, they try to save their money, and pretty soon they move out of this neighborhood. But not me and you. If we hit the lottery or anything, the people gonna get right next to us. That nigga gonna get that money away. You might as well give it away. He's gonna spend it. They talk about reparations. Boy, look out. If they give us reparations, the Mercedes people, the BMW people, and all them people gonna move into our neighborhood. They're gonna move in. And they're gonna put all them cars, they're gonna tear these houses down. They're gonna have all them cars right up and down the street. So you can go pick one that you can keep for 2 months or 2 years, and then you're gonna go broke. Why? Because we haven't had financial training. And people come here, they don't know, they said, them niggas need to be broke. Just look how they act. They've been trained that way. That's why when you come into the Islamic movement, you don't turn yourself over to people that don't understand who you are. You just don't do it. That's all I know. Well, we're going to keep you off the program. Just be off that program then. If you don't want to hear this, right? And you getting ready to bow down, not getting ready to bow down, happy to bow down to boss man, so no, we ain't going to do that. We're not going to do it. After you, Islam, the true liberation, once you're liberated, do you think you're going to go, anybody got any sense, and go back to the plantation? After you've been liberated from it, right? After you done said, Allah is my Rabbi, Allah is my Lord. Muhammad al-Nabiyin, he is the messenger of Allah. And this is Islam Adina. That's why Islam, the true liberation. This is from 1983. I'm going back to the dwarf just for a minute. So if you cut at the root, or cut at the top and transplant it over here, you grow up as a dwarf, or ornament. Just an ornament, something to stand set by the door, right? You're a thing, you're not human. We're not going for that. You can go for it, anybody want to, can get on Boss Man's team, join his order, his league, and do whatever you want. But once you taste a little bit of real freedom, you ain't gonna taste no more slavery. Buddy. I'm telling you, once you taste a minute or a second of freedom, you ain't gonna buy into no more of that slavery. Because it's like going down the thing and choosing all that good stuff, right? And once you taste freedom, so that's it. No more for me. So we were trained to be dwarfs and midgets or entertainers. We could outrun everybody else, jump higher, and entertain everybody, right? But we refuse to do anything for ourselves. Well, boss man gonna pay for that. He's been a bad boy. Yeah. He thought he had slipped away. He thought he had slipped away killing all Indians. He thought he had slipped away from wearing out the Negroes, from stealing all. I'll close with this because it's ridiculous. It's too funny. Everything he's doing is backfired. He went over and stole most of Mexico. California, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Nevada from Nieve, snow. The snow mountains. They stole all of that. They have a saying, the Latinos, we didn't cross the border crossed us. They say, you guys stay down there. Have you noticed, and I'll close with this, have you noticed the population trends in America in the last few decades? The Negro used to be the favored minority. He's losing status so fast you can't keep up with it. Who is it? Where can you go now and not find Latinos? Where can you go? I mean, think back 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago. It was in California and a few more places. Now, they're everywhere. Why? Because they're getting what they put out. And I'm going to close with this. I was at the University of Mexico City years ago. And, you know, this was a cultural thing, so, you know, they had white folks, and then they had Mexicans, you know. And so, this is at the University of Mexico City. So, something came up, and they told the white folks, well, you invaded us. And the white folks, what? We never invaded you. So I just got up and marched around the room. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. What's that? That's the Marine song, isn't that right? From the halls of Montezuma, 1.5 million people, part of Mexico City, was on floating gardens, right? Till boss man got there. So I just marched around the room, and then they thought, we did invade you guys. Yeah, from the hall, the song says it, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. That's over that way. Dear believers, this lecture is from 40 years ago. It's relevant today. It's relevant today. But it's a little more relevant because all of this time has passed. And the question is, what would you like to do? Where would you like to go? What part would you like to play in this great drama called life, right? For everybody here, for all of you who have put your life in the hands of boss man, you made a serious mistake. Yes, you did. You made a laughing mistake. Because boss man is about gone. Technically, he is gone. When you lose respect and when you lose all your continuity, your positive, correct behavior pattern, your ability to reason, boss man and lost his mind. Tell me one thing he does correctly now. He done lost his mind. All the allies he have is dummies. And the Zionists going with it. And I'll close with this, see, because the Zionists that used to be the boss man of America, I mean the regular old standard white man, right? Now it's the Zionists. The Zionists, the American police are using the same tactics that they used on Palestine, right? That's why with our stuff in California, we have certain properties we own. They say, you don't own them. Why? We don't recognize that. Of course they got to recognize it. But where do you see that? You see it in Palestine. They say, we don't recognize those Ottoman, right? And the Zionists beat you publicly, right? And the police used to shoot us privately. Why are they doing it so much public now? Why? They've been able to get away with it. Right? Why a guy keep his knee on the black man's throat for 8 minutes or more, right? With the TV on him, and he know it? That's what the Zionists told him to do. They trained the Zionist police here, teaching them the American, as if the Americans need to learn how to oppress people. Do you think, isn't that something? The Americans need to learn. Good God Almighty. That's two crazy people in the same house, the Zionists and the Americans. They got to go down. They are going down together. The world sees them, and we see them. And we're not buying into it. You can buy into them, brothers, if you want to. Your brother, I'm not doing it. No, because Allah is God. Rabbi. Islam Medina is our way of life. Right? Islam Medina. So it's Allah. Right? It's Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and it's Islam. And that's what we're holding on to. Anybody is welcome. We've been teaching the same message for over 40 years. We're going to keep the same message. Wherever they find us at, we're going to be doing the same thing. There's a lot of people there, that's good for them. If there's 2 people there, that's good for them too. Right? That's the way it is. Oh Allah, we seek thy refuge from anxiety and grief. We seek thy refuge from lack of strength and laziness. We seek thy refuge from cowardice and niggardliness. And we seek thy refuge from being overpowered by debt and the oppression of men. O Allah, suffice us with what is lawful. Keep us what is prohibited with thy grace. Make us free from want or desire. Ameen. Come to Salah.
الله أكبر الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة